Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching your evening operational briefing for March 31st, 2026, the final day of the month, and one that closes March with several simultaneous developments that will define the opening weeks of April. Tonight we have a genuine strategic headline on the Sumy direction. The northern grouping has broken into the second defensive line of Sumy Oblast at Mala Korchakovka, and we will explain precisely why this matters far beyond the tactical level, what the Sumy Forest Massif means for Russian operational maneuver, and how close this puts Russian forces to the oblast capital itself. In Kupyansk, the counteroffensive inside the city is now documentarily confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt. 3 separate video sets from 3 different city districts over 4 days. We will lay out what that evidence shows and what it means for the broader northern front picture. On the Lyman and Kostiantynivka directions, both cities are approaching critical junctures simultaneously. Aviation strikes, collapsing supply corridors, industrial zone consolidation, we cover all of it. And in the Middle East, Secretary of State Rubio has quietly but unmistakably revised the campaign's stated objectives downward. Nuclear disarmament is gone from the list. The ground operation is becoming less likely by the day. Oil added another $2. We will break down what the emerging American exit strategy actually looks like and what it leaves behind. A full breakdown across both theaters to close out the month. Let us get into it. In the night of March 31st, the Ukrainian side deployed approximately 190 drones, directing the primary wave toward Leningrad Oblast. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the interception of 92 drones during the night hours, a further 58 in the evening, and 98 during the course of the day. Throughout the entirety of March 31st, not a single video material documenting strike consequences in Leningrad Oblast was published. This follows yesterday's pattern, a mass strike toward Rostov-on-Don with extensive intercept footage near Taganrog. And again, no confirmed breakthrough of the layered Russian air defense system. 2 consecutive nights of mass Ukrainian drone strikes, 2 consecutive nights without documented damage. This does not mean the strikes are without effect. It means the available open-source evidence does not currently support claims of successful penetration. The distinction matters for accurate assessment. The Russian side deployed 289 drones for a strike against Ukraine during the same night. No damage assessment footage had been published by the close of the day. Ukrainian authorities appear to be suppressing visual documentation of strike consequences, a practiced tactic designed to prevent Russian battle damage assessment. The most operationally significant footage from the Ukrainian side today came not from strike aftermath, but from Kryvyi Rih. Ukrainian railway workers conducting an emergency evacuation of remaining locomotives from frontline areas, moving the rolling stock westward out of the engagement zone. This single episode communicates more about the effectiveness of the Russian logistics campaign than any official statement could. Systematic strikes against traction assets over recent days have compelled the Ukrainian side to withdraw its locomotive fleet beyond effective strike range. The resource most critical for sustaining the spring military campaign on the Ukrainian side is being actively depleted and is now being physically relocated to preserve what remains. A separate development from the air domain deserves recording. Footage published today documents the use of a Russian reusable drone interceptor in combat conditions. The UAV engaged and destroyed a Ukrainian drone, then continued patrolling without self-detonation. This is the first verified instance of a reusable intercept drone performing its function in an operational environment. The implications are significant. If scaled, this concept substantially improves the economics of drone defense, allowing a single interceptor to engage multiple targets rather than trading one asset for one kill. Also of note, a strike against the Nizhnekamsk Neftekhim petrochemical complex in the Nizhnekamsk area was recorded toward the end of the day. Explosions and fire were documented. The delivery means remain unconfirmed. No air raid alert preceded the event, and no Ukrainian drone tracks were recorded approaching this area on open-source monitoring resources. Various theories are circulating, including a possible approach from the direction of Kazakhstan, but none are substantiated at this stage. Reports of civilian casualties are arriving. Satellite imagery will be required to assess the actual scale of damage. This event remains pending full verification and attribution. The most strategically significant development of March 31st is the confirmed advance of the northern grouping in the Mala Korchakovka area of Sumy Oblast. Both the Northern Grouping Command and the Russian Ministry of Defense have confirmed the improvement of positions on this direction. The map has been corrected accordingly. The significance of this advance cannot be assessed in purely tactical terms. Mala Korchakovka is a component of the second defensive line of Sumy city, a fortified belt running through the settlements of Kotin, Pisarivka, Volzhanska, Kinitsia, Marino, Krapivshchina, Novosik, and Korchakovka. Until today, this line represented an intact defensive barrier covering the direct approaches to the oblast capital. Russian forces have now wedged into it. The history of this direction provides essential context. As far back as the summer of 2025, immediately following the conclusion of the Sudzha engagement, the Russian side attempted to cross the open ground between Yunakivka and Kondratovka. That advance was halted by a Ukrainian counteroffensive, and the line temporarily stabilized. Since then, Russian forces have been methodically building positions in the intermediate zone, the open terrain between the first and second defensive belts, and today appear to have completed that crossing and established a foothold on the second line itself. The operational significance of the second defensive line is determined by two distinct factors that compound each other. The first is structural. The dense clustering of villages along this line creates a unified fortified agglomeration, rather than a series of isolated strongpoints with gaps between them. Breaching one element creates immediate pressure on adjacent ones. The second factor is geographic and may prove more consequential in the medium term. This is where the large Sumy forest massif begins. Forest terrain fundamentally alters the operational calculus. It provides concealed movement corridors for units, drastically reduces the effectiveness of FPV drone operators who depend on line of sight, and enables the kind of deep infiltration that has proven effective on other directions. Entry into the Sumy forest is not simply a positional gain. It is access to a maneuver environment that favors the attacking side and complicates the defense. From within the forest, Russian forces will have the ability to advance southwest towards Sumy city along covered routes. This does not mean the city is immediately threatened, but it means the threat is now developing in a manner that cannot be addressed by simply reinforcing the second defensive line, because the forest makes that line flanked and permeable. Also confirmed today, footage from Sopich on the Hukiv direction, published by Ukrainian sources, documents Russian unit movement within the settlement. This validates previous reports of Russian advances on the Hukiv axis and confirms stable control over the settlement. The Hukiv direction continues its slow but consistent development toward Hukiv city. On the Kupyansk direction, the picture that has been assembling over the past several days has now reached the point where it can be characterized definitively. The West grouping has transitioned to a counteroffensive aimed at recovering positions inside Kupyansk city, positions lost during the Ukrainian counteroffensive operations of December 2025 through February 2026. The documentary basis for this assessment is now substantial. Over the past 3 to 4 days, multiple video materials have been published confirming Russian presence in the northwestern part of the city. Today added 2 more sets. Strikes against Russian forward positions in the northwestern sector and in the area of the city hospital. Aggregating across the past 10 days, confirmed Russian presence has been documented in the Yuvileyny residential district at Kupyansk Pivdeny railway station, in the private housing sector on the approaches to the main railway station, in the city centre and near the city hospital. 5 separate locations across the urban area, 5 separate independent confirmation events. Volume and geographic distribution of evidence does not admit the interpretation that Russian presence in the city is limited to isolated infiltration groups. The pattern is consistent with a systematic advance across multiple urban sectors simultaneously, which is the operational signature of a deliberate counteroffensive, not opportunistic reconnaissance. The map has been updated to reflect Russian presence in the northwestern part of the city. Corrections for the eastern bank of the Oskil, covering the Kovsharivka and Novusinov areas, entered on the basis of Ministry of Defense reports over the past 2 days, remain in place with the notation that visual verification is pending. One additional episode from Kupyansk today. Reports arrived of the destruction of a group of workers brought into the city to install anti-drone netting, with significant casualties from a Russian artillery strike. This indicates active Russian fire reconnaissance within the city boundary and the ability to engage time-sensitive targets in real time, consistent with a force conducting deliberate offensive operations rather than simply maintaining a defensive presence. Ukrainian claims of full control over Kupyansk are refuted by the accumulated evidence. The city is a zone of active combat contact with documented presence by both sides across multiple districts. On the Lyman direction, Russian forces today conducted aviation strikes against Ukrainian warehouses and positions within the city. Video materials published from two separate angles document multiple aerial bomb impacts in the central part of the settlement. The operational situation for the Ukrainian grouping in Lyman is described by multiple sources as critical. The mechanics of the crisis are now well established. Russian forces control or interdict the main supply routes south of Lyman. The corridor through Starodubivka, Ryhorodok, Brusivka, Stary Caravan and Shturov has been effectively closed over the past several days. The subject to systematic strike. River crossings are being destroyed almost immediately after they are established or restored. Reserves are being transferred into the city, but sustaining significant losses on the approach routes. The Ukrainian command understands the trajectory here. The parallel with Kostiantynivka is instructive and has been noted by Ukrainian analysts themselves. In Kostiantynivka, the absence of confirmed advance reports for an extended period was followed without warning by confirmation of Russian forces in the city center. Lyman may follow a similar pattern, a period of suppressed reporting, followed by a sudden cartographic correction. The strategic significance of Lyman in the overall operational scheme is unchanged. Its fall opens the flanking bypass of Sloviansk and threatens the single remaining supply road to the city. On the Kostiantynivka direction, two developments warrant attention. The first concerns Balka. Video materials published today document the use of Krasnopol precision-guided artillery munitions against Ukrainian positions in the settlement. The footage indicates the settlement has been effectively leveled by sustained fire engagement. The intensity of strikes against this specific location indicates active preparation for the next offensive step in this sector. Balka sits on a key axis approaching the city from the northwest. The second concerns the Megatex industrial zone in the city center. Expansion of Russian zone of control within the industrial zone continues. The Ukrainian command is transferring reserves to the central part of the city in an attempt to stabilize the situation. The arrival of these reserves confirms the reality of Russian pressure rather than alleviating it. The strategic logic of controlling the industrial zone, which effectively bisects the city, remains as described in previous editions. Full control creates the conditions for pressure against the residential districts from three simultaneous directions. At the current tempo, Kostiantynivka may pass under Russian control by early June 2026. On the Dobropilya direction, a video material published shortly before this briefing was compiled documents Ukrainian strikes against Russian forward positions on the approaches to the settlement of Shevchenko, north of Hryshine. The map correction will be entered in the next edition. This episode confirms the continuation of Russian infiltration northward from Hryshine, with the advance now reaching the outskirts of Shevchenko and the Serhivka area. The post-Hryshine momentum that was predicted is materializing in the form of sequential positional gains across this sector. On the Middle Eastern theater, March 31st produced two fundamental developments in the American position that, taken together, define the probable trajectory of the conflict's next phase. The first is the formal revision of stated campaign objectives. Secretary of State Marco Rubio today publicly enumerated the current operational goals: the destruction of Iranian aviation, the destruction of Iranian naval forces, a substantial degradation of missile capabilities, and the elimination of production facilities capable of restoring those capabilities. The list is notable for what it excludes. At the campaign's launch on February 28, 2026, Iranian nuclear disarmament was declared the primary strategic objective. The justification that gave the entire campaign its stated existential urgency. That objective has now completely disappeared from official American rhetoric. This is not an accidental omission or a rhetorical adjustment. It is a public acknowledgement that the goal has been abandoned, that the campaign's most ambitious declared aim will not be achieved, and that American policy has adjusted its expectations accordingly. The second development is the crystallization of what might be called the Allied Infantry, American Air Power Doctrine. According to multiple incoming reports, the United States has settled on a preferred operational model for any potential ground phase. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain provide infantry and ground forces, while the United States provides aviation, missile, and intelligence support. The problem with this model is fundamental and has not changed. The Gulf monarchies are pressing Washington precisely because they know they cannot unblock the Strait of Hormuz on their own. They need American ground forces to accomplish the objective. Without them, the model produces a situation where the United States conducts air operations and then withdraws, leaving Iran, degraded but intact, facing Gulf states that lack the military capacity to resolve the Hormuz situation. The domestic political calculus driving American restraint on ground operations is equally clear. Democrats are openly warning that a ground campaign with American casualties would cost Republicans 60 to 70 House seats. With elections approaching, the political risk calculus makes a large-scale ground commitment effectively impossible for the current administration, regardless of operational considerations. The scenario that is becoming increasingly plausible is the following. The United States continues an intensive air and missile campaign aimed at degrading Iranian economic infrastructure, power generation, desalination, industrial capacity, then withdraws from the active phase, leaving Iran to face its regional neighbors without American ground support. This would achieve the minimum acceptable American objective of demonstrating resolve and extracting some cost from Iran, while avoiding the catastrophic domestic political consequences of a ground war with casualties. Israel has officially declared it will not participate in any potential ground operation against Iran. On the southern Lebanese front, however, Israeli defense forces are continuing the methodical expansion of the buffer zone. The stated objective is to reach the Litani River and use it as a long-term defensive anchor, a natural barrier separating the Israeli security zone from the rest of Lebanon. The map on this direction has undergone significant corrections over the past several days as Israeli forces push deeper into the south. Oil added another $2 per barrel of WTI compared to yesterday. The upward trend is sustained, consistent, and showing no signs of reversal. With the Strait of Hormuz under Iranian control and Bab el-Mandeb under Houthi pressure, the structural factors driving prices remain fully intact, regardless of whatever diplomatic statements emerge from Washington. Briefing compiled as of the evening of March 31, 2026. Data on Nizhnekamsk, Malakochakovka, Rai-Oleksandrivka, and Kovsharivka require verification as additional materials become available.